Now, for the past 2 weeks, new programming rules have been in force in Kenya. They set, among other things, a mandatory 40% local content quota for both television and radio broadcasters, especially the free-to-air ones. The guidelines are formally known as the Programming Code, and by 2020, they aim to have 60% of local content broadcast by free-to-air license holders in Kenya coming from this country. However, in some places, the code duplicates existing legislation, like those rules that govern news content and news gathering, for example. In others, it dictates what must be included in children's content, with a very heavy emphasis on religious education. Earlier on, I asked my panel whether such aggressive micromanagement waters down the code's value.
The spirit of the code, because I was involved in the initial working group of putting together the code, and the spirit of it was, let's show guidance. Especially for kids. You know, there's no African animation that can cut across Africa. It does not exist. It just doesn't exist. And where do we start on this animation? Do we start off this animation with kids having mobile phones and playing those games where they're shooting each other? Or do we start this from the cultural point of view? I'm trying to teach my kids language, my local language. They laugh. They find it so funny because they have no other place where they watch it or they hear it, then it becomes real for them.
And therefore it becomes normalized.
Then it becomes normalized.
Liz, what do you think?
Well, in my view, first of all, when you just look at also the spirit of intellectual property law, it's supposed to help in advancing knowledge and knowledge sharing, yeah? So in this respect, the guideline is also helping us to sort of understand that as broadcasters, as content producers, that they have a public good role to play, yeah? They need to be able to use their creativity to share knowledge, to advance cultural knowledge as well, and that's really going to do that for us. So now not only are we just going to be borrowing foreign storylines now, hopefully someone will tell a story of their Gikuyu and Mombi, and we'd be able to see a nice animation come out from that. People will start digging deeper into some of the untold stories that we have, because we're very rich in content, but now I think with this code we are able to do that. The other thing I think in my view it has done, it's securing jobs for Kenyans in the film industry, because I know there's a clause there that says, what the kind of crew that would be involved in an animation or a production, so and so needs to be a Kenyan, this role needs to be a Kenyan, which is really good, because now what happens is any foreigner that comes to Kenya to shoot a film or any production, they would be obliged to put Kenyans on board, which is a plus. It's a big plus for us.
Going back to the question, to the point you raised about a public role, so to speak, but we've got a public broadcaster. I mean, surely that's KBC's job. Why should, if I go out there and I'm trying to make money off a business, I've got the ability and the choice to decide what to put on air, and I pay taxes anyway. We all do.
Yes.
To something that KBC should be doing.
The issue of KBC is a very unique one, and I believe we lost it at the point of the Constitution when we removed one of the key components that has made public broadcasters in other countries work very well. Take, for example, our nearest neighbor, who has done very well, Ethiopia. To this day, they still pay like a broadcast, a TV license. That TV license goes directly to the film industry. That's why in Addis, with the about 3 screens, show Ethiopian movies, Amharic movies, throughout the year. So that bit is where we call KBC a public broadcaster, yet we expect them to compete with the private broadcasters on advertising. We give the examples of SABC, BBC. The amount of money that they get directly from the public is what helps them do what they're doing. The British, to this day, they still pay that TV license. And yet us, we removed it and we called it a cake. And it was how much? 20 shillings?
Just for context, 20 shillings is roughly equivalent to about 20 US cents. It's a tiny amount of money.